Hey everybody, Shay Baker here. Got a new show I wanted to start called Predicting Patterns. The idea came to me a few days ago. It'd be pretty cool to have a show covering what leads up to the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour, like we're going to do today, Bassmaster Elite Series events, and FLW Tour events. Kind of go through, use some apps, use some weather data, those kinds of things to kind of predict some of the patterns they're going to play this week. So, for starters, I'm Shay Baker. For those of y'all don't know me, I spent a lot of time on the road covering tournaments, worked for FLW and Bass for years, and fished some tournaments, some small stuff, and then fished in college at Auburn, and then also fished some ever starts and some opens. But what I want to do right now, before we set the scene for where we're going to be at the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour inaugural event on Lake Toho, which you see here, I want to bring in a guest. Hey, Trevor.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good. So, for those of y'all don't know Trevor, he's a pretty good little stick. Let's see, you got 8 top 10s with Bassmaster, a 2010 Open win on Lake Seminole, and the FLW's got a BFL win, 11 top 10s. He's the owner of Fitzgerald Fishing. So, Trevor, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Good, good. Thanks for having me, Shay.
You had a good tournament, one of those top 10s last week, didn't you?
Yeah, it turned out good. That Harris chain, going into it, everybody thought it was going to be a warming trend and a big spawn fest and just huge giant weights and everything. But, these cold fronts we keep getting in Florida, 1 or 2 a week, it's just put the brakes on everything. And it ended up being an offshore event. It was one offshore and the majority of the top 10 were catching them offshore.
Well, that sets us up because we got another cold front that just came through, right? Last day or two. It's so that sets us up for what we're going to talk about, which is the inaugural Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour event down on Lake Toho. And you've had a lot of success, a lot of time spent on the water at Lake Toho. Do you think it's going to be very similar this week, given the conditions? Going to be a lot of offshore stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's looking at the long-term forecast for down here and everything. It's just not. You get a few warming days, but I don't think it's going to be enough warm days between now and when the event starts to really push them to the hill yet. I mean, our next new moon is like February 4th, I believe, and there's a warming trend that week, and I really see that's when it's going to happen here in Florida big time. Is that week, not this week.
Yeah, you can see it. I pulled up the weather while you were talking. It's going to get up all the way to the 80s on the 4th and 5th. So looking at the last couple of days, looks like lows down there around Kissimmee have been 46 and 48, 42 tonight. So really the worst night in a while is going to hit them right before they get started tomorrow. So what do you think, given that, I'm going to pull up the satellite image here of the fishery. Given that, you say offshore deal, and one thing I want to point out here, we got wind data on the ANGLR app. It's 9 mile an hour right there around Kissimmee. It was 22 when I looked last night. Had a lot of rain roll through. Had a pretty rough storm. You were driving to Okeechobee, actually. You're getting ready to fish a Coastal Series down there, right?
Yeah. I came down yesterday afternoon through all that rain and everything, and I fished all day today. And, man, today is just, cloudy, overcast, never really warmed up at all.
Yeah.
I mean, the warmest water I saw the whole day was like 61 degrees.
And
it's the same situation here on Okeechobee. I mean, there are a few spawners here right now, but it's not the big wave, that everybody looks for.
And you're a good bit further south at Okeechobee. How far south is that from Toho, from Kissimmee?
It's about 2 hours south of, about 2.5 hours south of Toho, about 2 to 2.5 hours. So it's a little ways. I mean, typically the water runs a little warmer down here. The spawn's a little earlier. But again, I just don't think it's one of those things that's going to happen, big spawn fest this week here either.
So let's talk about Toho then. And I believe, from what I understand, Major League Fishing is going to restrict their anglers just to Lake Toho, and they're not going to allow them to go to Kissimmee and some of the other lakes that have, in years past, like I have a tournament here pulled up for bass, one of their opens last year. Bobby Lane won with 60 pounds, and he'll be in this Bass Pro Tour event. He's going to be one to watch. But Brandon Lester is second place with 47. I mean, that's pretty tough. And I would imagine, just like this time, that was a cold front situation, kind of knocked them back. So what do you think? And that was with them being able to run to Kissimmee. So what do you think how do you think that's going to play into the weight situation, which obviously, again, with Major League Fishing, it's catch as many as you can. So
yeah,
it's a big fish fishery, but I mean, what do you think
Well,
we're going to see as far as good sized fish?
I mean, typically, my experience is most of those bigger tournaments like that, when they're allowed to go to Kissimmee, usually gets one out of Kissimmee.
Yeah,
Especially this time of the year, because Kissimmee just has so much more spawning habitat. It's got the big, vast pad fields and the reeds and the hydrilla where the fish really, really love to spawn. Um, Toho has that; it just doesn't have as much. So it's going to kind of narrow things down. But again, like we were saying earlier, with it being pretty much pre-spawn right now, the majority of the fish on that chain still need to spawn. With that being said, Toho has a lot of offshore grass right now, a lot of offshore hydrilla. I think the guys that get out there with a rattle trap or a jerk bait, chatterbait, and I really think they can catch them really good and really fast. I think that would be a huge key for that event. Is a moving bait, a reaction bait.
so how would you fish this differently? Knowing, okay, so typically, even if you were restricted to Toho, you're going to try to catch the 5 biggest you can catch. So it's even tempting without a lot of punching cover to still maybe try to punch a good bit just to try to get some bigger bites. But knowing that you have a tournament where you can catch as many as you can and they all count, how would you approach Toho differently for a Bass Pro Tour event than a traditional tournament?
Yeah, I mean, there is flippable cover on Toho. I don't know if that would be my choice though, because of that format. I
Yeah,
think my choice would be to get a chatterbait or a rattle trap and get out there and just catch as many as you can, because you're going to catch quite a few fish, but in that mix, you're going to get lucky if you can land them and catch a couple big ones. Because they live out there.
yeah.
They live out there offshore, and they're there. There's certain staging areas right now that are setting up perfect for this. So, I think that's going to be the main deal, is that the reaction bait, casting. But you're still going to have your Bobby Lanes and Gray Hackneys that, are going to find that flippable vegetation,
Yeah.
and they're going to put that to good use. It may not be the same numbers as the offshore guys, but it's going to be some good ones.
So what do you go with when you go to Toho? Are you, like, traditionally it's a lot of gold rattle traps, I believe, in Florida, right? Is that something
Yeah,
you go
gold,
with?
gold, or yeah, exactly. There you go. Gold, chrome with blue back. Those are pretty much standard down
Yeah.
here. Yep.
So do you do the same colors when you move over to a jerk bait, or what color jerk bait do you go with?
Yeah, I mean, I like that chrome too. Anything that resembles a shad is about the best deal. Down there you got real tannic water, so you can't really get away with too much translucent. Like a real translucent bait, you pretty much got to have something, especially if it's going to be overcast like it was today. You got to have something with a little shine to it.
Do you go with the gold too, or just the
I
chrome?
like the gold.
Yeah.
I mean, those fish down here primarily feed, on brim and wild shiners, and wild shiners are gold, and it's a good color.
So let's take a look at the lake, maybe break down some of the areas. Looking at the weather, we said, it's going to be kind of a pre-spawn deal. There might have been a few up trying, but that would have been a week ago now was the last time y'all saw any real good sunshine, I believe. So if you
Yeah.
look at the lake, basically there's not a lot of topo change. I mean, the lake, on average, how deep is that lake?
I mean, there's, outside the Kissimmee grass, the average is 5 to 6 foot, and then the middle of the lake, you're looking around 10 foot. Anywhere from 8 to 10 foot out there in that offshore hydrilla.
So would you say like the north end is more where it's going to be one kind of south of those islands, or
Well, a lot of the offshore hydrilla is actually on the south end of the lake, basically from like Browns Point south. That whole big area of the lake down there is full of the offshore hydrilla. There is some up north as well, but the majority of the big hydrilla fields and everything are all down south this year.
I'm pulling up. You can see on Browns Point, it comes out there a pretty good bit, and a lot of that looks submerged too, out off that point. So basically, from that point, working your way down, I'm looking at the satellite image here, and you can see a good bit of it just on there because the lake's so shallow. So
Yeah.
one thing I want to show everybody and talk to you a little bit about. So right now, I'm pulling up some of these clumps. I can't even remember the name of this marina down here. I fished open and was practicing and put in down here. Or put in and ran down here.
There's Whaley's and then there's Southport. It's probably Southport.
Yep, I believe so. So you come down here and kind of towards the locks right down here. I didn't want to come and sit in those opens. We'll have 6, 7 locks full of boats go through, you know. So I wanted to try to find somewhere to fish, and I came over here and actually I'm gonna pull up a video and show one of the things that plays down there a lot of times in Florida is these big jigs, and y'all make a big jig. This was before that jig was out, but there's these reed clumps that are kind of on the outside edges here, and I mean that's when those big ones when they're moving up. It seems like those big, or when they're moving out, but it's got to be kind of warm. It seems like, and
yeah,
they're either post-spawning aggressive or they're pre-spawning aggressive, or even spawning on some of these reed clumps. And you throw that big jig in there, and you bring some big ones out. But I mean, I don't feel like that's going to play that much. And I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday. It's just not, the weather is not conducive for that kind of bite. Do you think?
no, not really. I mean, that's going to play some this week on Okeechobee, just because it always does. You know, Okeechobee's just a big jig kind of place, but that's really not going to be a deal there on Toho because you know, a lot of those fish are coming and going. You know, that you catch on that big jig from the spawn. So that's really not going to be that big of a factor this week. I really think you know, as far as flipping goes, I think punching would be more of a factor than the big jig.
So it's funny that you brought that up because you kind of read the script. I got a punching video here that we just put out. Just did a huge article on angler.com about punching, and a real comprehensive piece where we went in and talked about a lot of stuff I learned from you and learned from Rich and from Tharp and a lot of the JT Kenny, a lot of the guys that, you know, are the epic punchers. So it's a real big article, but playing a little video right now. That's actually using Trevor's rod. It's the big jig heavy mat flipping rod, and that thing, it'll pull them out of there. But talking about that, talking about punching, there's a little video up right now of me on Eufaula punching that went with that article, and you can check out the article, guys, if y'all want to at angler.com. But where would the punching be best right now? Where would the mats be based on? Okay, so the wind's been blowing, I guess, out of the northwest mostly. So what would that do for the punch bite?
Well, there's a place on Toho called Big Grassy Island. It's just north of what they call like North Steer and everything. It'll be over on the east side of the lake. And there's this time of the year that you get a lot of like tussock mats and blown in reeds, blown in hydrilla, and what they call chop grass. Basically, it's where like boats run through the Kissimmee grass and it chops it up and it ends up floating. You know, this time of the year, like tomorrow, it's going to be bright sunshine again, and these fish haven't seen good warm weather for a while, so they love getting underneath that stuff because it attracts the heat. You know, I fished in ABA last year down there and did pretty well, and I stayed the whole time right there in Grassy punching. So, as far as Toho goes, that's probably going to be one of the best areas for punching. It's called Big Grassy Island.
I believe I'm looking at it on here. Let me see if it's up here. It's kind of got a pocket between two islands. Wilson Cove, Cypress Cove, and Wilson Cove. Grassy Island's right above it, maybe.
Yeah, you'll see. I don't know if your app shows the marker numbers, but it's just inside of marker 24. There'll be a red channel marker. The number is 24. It's just to the east of that marker 24.
I got you.
All right, that's just a good consistent pre-spawn area this time of year. They'll actually spawn in there. You know, it's clean enough water in there where they'll spawn in 3-4 foot. You know, sometimes even 5 foot deep, depending on the time of the year. But a lot of fish move into that cove this time of the year, and there will be, you know, flippable vegetation in there right now for these guys.
I'm kind of just scrolling around right now, which the satellite image that's on here now will be different than what it's like, you know, when they get out there. But basically what I've found and what I've seen from fishing with you and the rest of the guys is if there's some kind of reed clump or something like that that's kind of stuck to the bottom or hydrilla growing up, that'll catch all that stuff you're talking about floating. So even if there might not be an exact thing like what you see on the satellite image right now, if it looks like it's something stuck to the bottom, they'll be there from year to year to year. And, you know, you can at least go and find some bunched up overhead cover. So
there's a lot of reed islands in there, you know, cattails and pencil reeds that collect all that floating debris and stuff and forms all those mats. So that's the key for that area there.
And you can see here, I got it pulled up, but you can see kind of where the hydrilla is on either side of this little lane, and you see where people are going through with your trolling motor, kind of going around through, but the boat lane's kind of right there. So pretty neat being able to kind of break down all this stuff. And so let's see, on a chatterbait deal and a rattle trap deal, that's back down here on the south end. We've got what was the point? You called it Brown's Point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
basically, from
Brown's
Browns
Point.
Point east, is it just all submerged vegetation out there?
Yeah, for the most part, if you drew a line straight across from Browns Point and then went all the way down south towards the dam, it's just it's not a whole entire wall of hydrilla. The whole lake's not just topped out, matted out hydrilla, but it's real splotchy. So I think the guys will be able to get out there and find them staged in the grass or in the holes surrounded by grass. That was a big thing for me on the Harris chain in this last Bass Open, was finding them where they're staging, to move in the closest area to the spawning grounds, the grass closest to those big bays. Like, down there on the southeast corner of Toho, you got, there's a big cove down there where a lot of fish spawn, so the guys that are going to be down that southeast corner of Toho graphing and looking around down there, they're probably going to find some pretty good grass that's going to be holding a good group of pre-spawners. I remember a friend of mine, Jeremy Smith, won a BFL down there a few years ago. This time of the year on a rail trap, had I think 28 or 29 pounds right in front of that. I believe they call it like Friars Cove down there on the southeast corner. And he said the same thing. It was just a group of big pre-spawners waiting to move in, and he caught them out of hydrilla as well. So I think guys looking at that in that area, guys looking outside of Browns Point, because a lot of fish spawn inside Browns Point too. There's a big bay behind one of the what they call a muck island, where they went in there a few years ago and dredged Toho, and it's got good hard bottom with flagweed and all that, just good spawning grounds. So those, if it was me, that would be two key areas on that lake I look for a good rattle trap or chatterbait bite for sure.
Just kind of these areas right outside the spawning areas.
Yeah, they're just going to stage. They're going to find the closest best thing that makes them comfortable. Probably going to have a little bait involved with it, to hold them over until they're ready to spawn. But that's going to be the deal. That was the deal last week in the Bass Open on Harris Chain. That's going to be the deal on Toho this week too.
All right, I was just kind of going in and dropping some waypoints while you were talking, where the guys could visualize kind of what we were talking about. What about that canal that goes over to, what's that, East Lake Toho?
Yeah, there's a canal. I think you and I fished it one year when you came down for ICAST. We went in there, and there was some grass in there that you and I flipped and caught some. And there's a big cove in front of that called Goblet's Cove, and it's a really good area. It has good clean water, and a lot of fish spawn in there too. But it's really hard. You can catch them in Goblet's Cove, right in the middle of the cove, but it's one of those areas where it's just hard to pinpoint like a staging spot. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot more broad and it's a lot more open in there. It doesn't really narrow down like some of those other areas do. For example, like down there in that cove on the southeast or Browns. But there's, if there is, I don't know, I haven't been there, but if there is grass in Goblets, that could be a player as well. I remember a few years ago, AJ Slagona caught a big giant bag, like 30-something pounds in an open down there. He was actually flipping the grass. He wasn't throwing a rattle trap or a chatterbait, but he did in an open a couple of years ago down there in January catch a giant bag in Goblets.
I think I was shooting that tournament. He weighed in after dark. I remember because we had to set up lights to get pictures because it was a monster bag.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, just really nice fish. And again, that was just those pre-spawners. That was one of those non-spawn tournaments. It was, I think second or third week of January, and he caught a giant bag, and it was right there, in that same cove we're talking about.
What do you think? Best I can tell from reading, and it's all new to all of us, this Major League Fishing format for the Bass Pro Tour, I believe they're going to have 7.5 hours of competition per day, per angler. Knowing you could catch, and this is a really hard question, but I want to see what you say. Knowing you could catch as many as you can, just try to catch as much weight as you can, no matter how many it is. what would be a target weight for you when you set out that day, given the current conditions? I wanna guess on what your prediction is for the total weight for the guy that leads on day one.
Man, I think with the way that place is setting up, I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a lot bigger weight than what everybody thinks. I'm going to have to go with, I would say somewhere around 30 to 40 pounds would be my guess, when it's all said and done. Because, and the reason I say that is I don't think guys are going to catch 5 absolute giants, but I think guys are going to get on that stage and stuff where they do catch those multiple 2 to 4 pounders,
So you can see somebody having 40 pounds all day and their best 5 only weighing 22, which would be a great bag still, or even like 18, and they wouldn't even have the best 5 of everybody out there, but 40 pounds kind of being that mark to get to in 7.5 hours, keeping everything.
Yeah, that's what I would go with, because you're going to have guys that, again, throwing the chatterbait and the rattle trap, you're going to get lucky and catch a really big one or two, and it's dependent on if they can land them, I mean, especially with rattle traps and stuff like that, it's not as easy to land them as it is when you're punching or throwing a single hook bait, so that's going to be a big key factor. I know, they've got the no touch carpet rules and all the landing rules and everything, so guys are really going to have to keep that in mind as well, landing those big fish with treble hooks.
So what do you think, who do you think would be a guy to watch for this thing? I kind of made a few notes here, and they've got some guys on Major League Fishing's site here. Bobby Lane, Chris Lane, Shaw Grigsby, Scroggins, and Randall Tharp are all Florida natives now, all obvious threats. One of the things that I've noticed about fishing against you and Rich Howes and other guys that are from Florida is, given these conditions, you excel even more than when it's wide open, you're liable to kick our teeth in with a big bag. But given these conditions, like I was talking to Howes, and he was talking about fishing a real small worm real slow in that open y'all ran up there. And I mean, that's just, you got to have so much confidence in what you're doing. So how big a deal do you think it's going to be for these locals? I know the rest of these guys, it's different from an open or a coastal level competition, because all these guys have seen all this stuff before. But is there still just that much of an advantage to be local when you have these cold fronts?
I don't think for this one it's going to be that big of a local deal, only because they have to stay on Toho. If they opened it up to where those guys could go to the other lakes, because sometimes those other lakes are a player, and sometimes, for example, a few years ago in one of the Bass Opens I fished down there, one of the guys that did real well caught him in Tiger Lake, and he was a local, and it's one of those things where if you come, let's say you come here from out of town, that might not be something that you go look at, but because they're confined to Toho, I really think the local advantage is going to kind of go to the wayside, because you're going to get the guys who love fishing offshore and love casting, chunking and winding, versus the straight up flippers that are going to look for 5 bites a day and hope that they're all giant, So so I don't think the local advantage is going to be that huge of a factor, only because they're confined to Toho.
And it's not that brutal of a cold front, really. I mean, it's kind of just been one after the other, but it's not like it was 25 there last night,
Right. When do they start tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be cool again tonight. It never really warmed up today. I don't know if the sun came out there, but here in Okeechobee, the sun never came out today. It was overcast all day.
Yeah. It seems like that's a big thing, too, is it doesn't really matter so much the temperature as it does if the sun's out, just because water's so shallow in Florida. It seems like even if it stays a little colder, but you've got sunshine, that can help the fish so much more than it being an 80-degree and overcast day.
The sun warms our water way more than air temp. Yeah. It could be a high of 45, and if the sun's out, the water's warming.
Yeah. So as long as they got some sunny conditions, I mean, it's still not going to be like this huge head to the banks in the next 3 or 4 days kind of deal. Like you said, it looks like that's February the 4th, probably about to line up with, I think the FLW Tour is going to be there about the time it lines up perfect. So, and they'll be opened up all the way to Kissimmee.
That's gonna be something there.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one to watch.
Be special.
What about Dean Rojas? He had that monster bag, 45 pounds, 2 ounces. Did he catch any of them on Toho, or all of them, or? Did he run?
Yeah, every single one of them. I actually fished that tournament as a co-angler.
Wow.
And I was still in high school then. I fished that tournament. And I actually drew Alton Jones on day 2. And Alton told me when we met up that morning, he said, we're going to be fishing where the majority of those, because Alton fished where the majority of those big bags got caught on day 1 up there on the north end. And he told me, he says, we're going to catch them, and Alton, you know what, to be honest with you, I learned so much from Alton that day. He was probably one of the coolest pros I ever drew as a co-angler. He told me, he said, listen, my goal is to catch the female first. If you're there handy with the net, I'll catch her. He said, I'll let you catch every male that we leave behind. And it was awesome because, I was still in high school. I was learning, and it really taught me a lot about sight fishing. And I have actually gone on to really excel at major tournament sight fishing because of what I learned from Alton that day. But it was incredible. I mean, we saw Dean catch one of those giants that he caught on day 2. And, Aaron Martins was in there as well. And it was just, the lake was a lot different back then. It was just that whole north end was just crystal clear shell bottom. And that was it was awesome to be there. It was even more awesome to partake in it. And I did really good in that one. I think I ended up like 3rd as a co-angler in that and won big fish. So that was a fun event. But
one thing about Toho is almost every big tournament comes out of Toho Marina. And all those fish get toted all the way back up there and let go in Toho. So, a lot of those Kissimmee fish that win tournaments, and I'm going to pull up a picture that I saw Justin Lucas post a while ago. He actually posted I think it said 11, it's on Instagram. He had 11.5 pounds, biggest fish he's caught in 12 years. And he caught that today in practice down there. So that's a good one, especially like I said for Toho. But they're brought up there, so they're there,
Yeah, they definitely live there. There's a big tournament out of there each year in May, and when the water's up enough to where last year they had it at Kissimmee because the water was low and people couldn't get through the lock safely. But that tournament in May every year, if you don't have upper 30s, you have no shot to win. And we've had 2 years ago we had like 31 and came in 3rd. So you got to think about, not only are these major tournaments hauling all these fish up here from Kissimmee, but all these local tournaments too. Toho is absolutely loaded with giants. And the whole chain is, but Toho especially,
So one guy they got on here is Kevin Van Dam, and that's one that sticks out to me because of the jerkbait bite that could be happening with this weather and because of the numbers game. And, 5 2.5 pounders are as good as 1 12.5 pounder or whatever, So it's going to be interesting to see. That's going to be kind of my outside pick, I think, for this thing is Van Dam with the jerkbait. Who would you pick and what would they be doing? One guy to win, what's he doing?
I haven't looked at the full roster, but, man, Kevin would be a good pick. To be honest with you, I might have to go with Scroggins on this one because, a lot of people know Scroggins for a flipper. But because he's from the St. John's, he's a cranker too. He's gonna get out there with a rattle trap and he's gonna find them. Scroggins won a Bass Open on Kissimmee chain in Toho with a rattle trap years ago. So my pick would have to probably be Terry Scroggins. And the only reason I say that is just because he has that confidence going into this with an open win on Toho with a rattle trap. So I would have to go with Scroggins.
Scroggins with a trap, so that's your call.
Yeah, and the other reason I say Scroggins is because Scroggins has enough confidence where you might see him start with a rattle trap or a moving bait, and then as the sun gets up, you might see him move somewhere and go flip some mats for a giant. He just has that ability to do the multiple techniques and make it work all in one day.
That's what's going to be interesting to see if they mix it up some and still try to put a couple of big punch fish in or that kind of deal. But we appreciate your time here, Trevor. We got your pit, and looks like it's getting dark down there on you. You got your studio light and you just turned on. That's good.
But, a little motion light here just kicked on. I didn't even know that existed, but that worked out pretty good.
Well, I appreciate it. I'll go ahead and cut you loose, and good luck down there at Okeechobee, and hope you get on a big bag and win that thing.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.
Have a good one. See you.
All right, guys, we'll kind of wrap it up. That was a lot of good insight from Trevor. I think what we're going to look at is, like you said, we got a little bit of punching stuff up, shallow, got some mats, got some other staging areas, spawning areas. back in there, then staging areas out in front. Back down here on the south ends, kind of some of the hot spots, Browns Point down, either the staging areas, and probably not going to be the spawning areas, aren't going to be where they're going to be catching so much as they are going to be staging in front of those areas. Again, that was where I had that good fish on the jig, but that's probably not going to be playing because they're not that aggressive up shallow around those reeds. So going to be interesting to see. That's our predictions. I was going with Kevin Van Dam with a jerk bait, and Trevor went with Terry Scroggins with a trap, maybe mixing in a little punching. So we'll see if we got it right. Let us know if you like the show. I'm going to try to do this for all FLW Tour, Bass Pro Tour events, and the Elite Series events. Use the ANGLR app and weather apps, avionics, all that kind of stuff to kind of see if we can't predict a few of these guys and what they do. So let us know what you think in the comments, and have a good one. Shay Baker, I'm out of here.